Okay, and we are moving to the next talk, which will be given by Sven Bauer. He'll be presenting his work on forging DILITHIUM and FALCON signatures by a single fold injection. So, Sven, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Yes, one second, because the slides have been updated. Session 2, session 3. Okay, should be all right now.
Yeah, looks good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Okay. Right, okay. So this talk is about forcing an embedded device to accept forged signatures by attacking the signature verification. So why would I want to do this as an attacker? Well, embedded devices or any devices use signatures to verify, for example, the integrity of software updates or any data they process. So if a device gets a firmware update, it will check the signature. If the signature is valid, it will install the update. Otherwise, it simply will ignore it. Another application is obviously opening of authenticated channels. So the device will talk to you if you have a valid signature, and if you don't, it won't talk to you. So the incentive is, of course, as an attacker, if you can forge a signature, or rather, if you can force a device to accept a forged signature, you can get it to install any software you want, which means you've won, or you can force it to talk to you, make it believe you're a sort of a properly authenticated user, even if you're not. So there's quite some incentive to actually attack this. So how do you do this? Obviously, if you believe in the security of your signature scheme, you can't just forge signatures. So you have to force the device to accept a signature which is presumably invalid if signature verification runs through properly. So you have to force unintended behavior, and that's, of course, a fault injection. There's an obvious place to do this. Any signature verification ends in a sort of a one-bit result. The signature is valid or it is not valid. You branch this way or you branch the other way. So as an attacker, if you don't know anything about the implementation, you'll just go for the end and sort of try to inject a fault there and sort of try to get the implementation to go the wrong way or flip that one bit. And of course, implementers know that as well. So they specifically secure the end of a verification function. So the obvious question then is, are there perhaps other places in the code? Are there sort of places where you can also inject a fault with that effect, which are perhaps not so obvious? And in a way, this whole talk was inspired by an old paper, or a couple of old papers by Seifert and then Muir. So they described how to attack RSA signature verification. I'll just tell you briefly what this is about. The idea is you take a RSA public key, you take the public modulus, and you start flipping bits. And number theory tells you don't have to do that for very long. And you end up with a modulus that you can actually factor, because it's not, doesn't just have two large prime factors, that has loads of smaller factors. So you factor that, you calculate phi of it, and you sort of generate your own matching private exponent to that. And then you use that for signing. Now, of course, this is not a valid signature anymore to the original public key, but never mind, you just send that to the device with your malicious software. And as the device tries to verify that signature, you induce a fault that will flip exactly those bits in the modulus. So you kind of trick the device into using your incorrect RSA key. And it's kind of a bit of a surprising attack, or at least for an implementer. I mean, hardly anybody would have thought about sort of securing that bit of the code or the public modulus before these papers were published. Now, of course, RSA is not quite state of the art anymore, so we want to know, can you do this with post-quantum signatures or something like that? Okay, let's have a brief look at dilithium. So don't worry about the details. The notation is actually exactly the same as in the specification. So if you're bored in your hotel room tonight, you can just put the specification next to it and read in your own time, but don't worry about the details for the time being. So this is dilithium signature verification. This is the obvious place where you attack it, right at the end, where you have this one bit, this one decision. Yeah, the signature is valid or it's not valid, one way or the other. So this is where you would go if you don't know anything else about it. And we'll show that there is also sort of a less obvious place. You can just attack it there. And that's perhaps a place which sort of most implementers would not consider protecting in a particular way. So how does this work? Okay, the first thing the attacker does is obviously the attacker will choose a different message. I mean, that's the whole point. You want your own message to be accepted by a device, say your own firmware update, your malicious firmware update that you as an attacker want to get onto the device. So you choose the message. If you change the message, that means this is essentially message hash. That will change because the message enters that calculation. If mu is different, it's different down here as well, obviously. The third thing the attacker does, and I've left out the second thing for didactical reasons, we'll see in a moment why. The attacker will inject a fault that will exactly skip this step. So we'll skip this subtraction step there. Let's just for the time being assume we've done that. Well, if you do that, then the value on the left here, the W1 prime changes, obviously, because you've changed the values on the right. That means the input to shake here in line 5 changes. Obviously, that means C tilde changes. And now it's clear what the second step is. And the second step is, as the attacker, you calculate C tilde exactly like that. You can do that, all the information there is public. You can do that as an attacker. So you calculate C tilde like that. And that is your new sort of forged signature, if you like. Now, why does all of that work? If you go through it from the beginning again, nothing changes in line 1. This is just a sort of a public key expansion. Line 2, you get the wrong message hash. Okay. Line 3, you get the wrong value of C because we've changed C tilde as the attacker. Never mind. This is sort of skipped here by default. So the device calculates the wrong W1 prime. It verifies this bit. That's just the same as the valid signature, so that will pass. The C tilde, the attacker has chosen so that this passes. So that will pass, fine. The other conditions are also unchanged. So signature verification will pass. It's exactly what we wanted. What is the principle behind that actually? If you just read through the signature specification, the verification specification, again, you see that here, W1 prime depends on C tilde. And conversely, in that line, C tilde depends on W1 prime. So you have this sort of cyclic dependency, which you can normally not break without knowing the private key. And with this fault injection, we've broken it by just sort of removing the C there, removing that one dependency link. So that's the idea. Okay, that was just the specification. Obviously, you can't inject a fault into specification. You inject fault into sort of real code on real device. So what does this look like in codes? Just as a representative sample, if we've taken the PQM4 implementation, I mean, there's nothing special about PQM4. This is not a PQM4 attack also, if you like. yeah, we just needed some sort of representative code sample. So this is, can I go back? Let's try this. Yeah. So what we want to skip is a subtraction here. And pulling back sub, this is exactly the subtraction we had on the previous slide. And if we go sort of one step lower, even go down to machine code, then you see this is just a single function call here. So if you can't read ARM assembly, this is just a function call here, the BL. So skipping the subtraction just means you skip one single instruction, you skip this BL instruction. And I think a few people have mentioned it today, over the day, this is sort of a well-known effect of a fault injection, a single instruction skip. And even when you look at the surrounding code, if you skip the step, the instruction before, so it doesn't really matter. So you could even, there's even a bit of leeway for the attacker, if you like. Okay, we've done this in a simulation just as a sanity check. So we ran this on an actual M4 board with the debugger and sort of skip that instruction, the debugger, and the attack works. Okay, what can you do about this? Well, there are, of course, numerous generic countermeasures to ensure control flow integrity. You can use any of those, of course. If you want to do something specific to this attack, you could replace the subtraction by something like that. So you first add a sort of a random vector to A times Z, and you add the same random vector to C times T1. And that means if this subtraction step is skipped, then you get a sort of a random result there, and signature verification will fail again. So you can use it as a kind of an infectious computation countermeasure or whatever. Okay, there's an alternative way to do this. This is not in the paper, just to prove the point is worth actually coming here or watching the YouTube video. So this is the attack as it was. I said the point is we managed to break the link between W1 prime and C tilde, this sort of mutual dependency. And you can also do this by sort of removing W1 prime from the shake input there. That's the same effect. Again, you break the mutual dependency between C tilde and W1 prime. And again, to show this is realistic, if you look into the code, this is sort of typical how you would implement a shake. You have these sort of typically called absorb functions in the shake, any shake API I'm aware of anyway. And this is the absorb function that would just absorb the W1 prime into the Ketchup sponge, and you can just remove this. Is again skipping a single function call. We've seen that. Okay. So that was DILITHIUM. Let's have a look at FALCON. Again, the obvious place to attack it is right at the end. You have a single comparison, you could go for that. You have a single, in the end, there's sort of one-bit result, you could go for that, so nothing new. Again, there is a less obvious place, that is here. So let's do the same thing. Let's have a closer look. What will the attacker do? Obviously, choose a different message. That's the whole point. We want to get the device to accept our own message, so we change the message as an attacker, clearly. Again, if we change the message, this is sort of a message hash again. That will change the message hash. This we get a different C. C is different down here as well. Now, again, I leave out the second step for the time being. Third step, we cancel out this C with a fault injection. We just remove it from the calculation. So when you do that, it's kind of a, well, not so clear, but fairly clear how you want to choose S now. Because when you look at line 6, this vector S consists of two right, not quite correct. This vector S1, S2 needs to be short in some sense. The shortest vector is 0, just make it 0. How do you make S1, S2 0? Well, if S2 is 0, then S1 is 0. S2 is actually part of the signature's input. So you just replace the input S with a compressed version of 0. This gets decompressed to 0 here. S2 would be 0 then. S2 is 0 here. That makes S1 0. That makes the whole vector 0. 0 has length 0. So it's 0. It's definitely short enough. No problem. Verification passes. It's the whole thing spelled out, yeah? Compressed 0. Decompressed, decompressed it is 0 again. S2 is 0. 0 is not invalid. S2 is 0, S1 is 0, you get the 0 vector there. Verification passes. Okay, let's have a look at the code again. Funny enough, it's actually sort of implemented the other way around in PKM4. So here it was C minus S2 times H, and it is implemented actually as sort of, yeah, as it says here, as S2 times H minus C, which perhaps makes it a bit easier for us. So again, you have a single function call, a single subtraction call. So you would expect you can just skip a function call and you're done. Alternatively, you could force this log n to 0, by the way, if you're more interested in data force and instruction skips, but let's stick with instruction skip for the time being. We had a look at the code, the assembly code, and found that this is actually inlined by the compiler. So there is no function call you could skip. So what do you do in this case? Okay, let's have a look at the inline function. This is the whole function. BNE, this is a sort of a branch back to here. So this is a loop that just sort of loops over the vector. And this would be essentially from here to there, the function you want to skip. So, okay, you could start with how we skip multiple instructions or so, but yeah, things get difficult then. Instead, if we want to stick with the model of a single instruction skip, we just skip the BNE at the end. So we don't skip the whole thing. The loop will run once and then just will fall through if you skip that. And so we can't skip, so sort of remove the whole C from the computation, but we can choose the signature such that this is sort of, this C there is the first coefficient of C is 0. If I go back to the specification, we wanted to remove this from the computation. So this is a sort of a vector, goes over several components. We can choose R such that the first component of C is 0 here, because R is just part of the signature. And because we fall through out of the loop, only the first component is going to be looked at. So we don't care about the rest. So it's like making it 0, just works. Okay, what can you do about this? Essentially, the same as with DILITHIUM. You can do generic control flow sort of protection measures, or you can do, again, a sort of add a random vector that has to be canceled out. And if it's not canceled out, then you get random results. Signature won't verify. So, to summarize, we've seen that if you can bypass signature verification, that this is sort of complete compromise of the device. In the case of firmware update, for example, assigned firmware update. As an attacker, you can install any firmware you like on a device, means you win. there are these kind of obvious places in a signature verification routine that you would attack. That's towards the end. Implementers know that, they protect that. You have a hard life as an attacker if you go for that part. So you go looking for less obvious places. We've seen there are less obvious places. We've seen this for DILITHIUM, we've seen this for FALCON, and more likely than not, an implementer will have overlooked those. You can go for those as an attacker and sort of get the device to accept your forged signature. And that's it. Thank you very much.